Hey friends, it's that time again. Kenny Jahng here with the podcast that we are just delivering one after another, leader after leader, to give you the insights and context and some zeitgeist type of material so that you can actually lead better. And today is no different. We are at the top of the A-list here. We've got Greg, who lives in Colorado, and he has been a friend for years. And what I've seen him do in terms of equipping and supporting churches across the country has just been incredible. Greg is a church planter. He's been an executive pastor. He is the founder of Parable, which is a company that I've come to know and respect because they're dedicated to helping churches keep every dollar on mission. And that's through bookkeeping and accounting and CFO services. But as I've gotten to know Greg and his team, they do much more than that. And you can see it. His passion comes out because I think Greg's dedicated to helping pastors stay healthy, finish strong, and he does that through not just his venture here at Parable, but his involvement with other ministries like the board of Barnabas Network and Respite and all these other things that he's involved in. Now, welcome, Greg, to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, Kenny. Wow, we're going to be zeitgeisting. And, this is amazing. I love it.
Well, this is just really interesting. And this is just, I think, an example of how Parable is doing more than just the transactional finance services, et cetera. Is that recently you and your team executed a state of church finances nationwide survey, right? Hundreds of churches in there across pretty much from coast to coast. And I think data is really important for leadership, that we can figure out what's going on, what is the trends, and that's why I want to put you in the hot seat here today, and really figure out like how are churches giving, how are they spending, how are they adapting to all those financial and technological shifts in front of us today. And I think if anyone wants to get the report, we'll put it in the show notes. You can get it at the Parable website. That thing is something you should download. They've got all these summaries of findings. They've got a webinar. All that kind of stuff is there. But today, we've got Greg in front of us. And so I thought, Greg, why not tap your brain in terms of your leadership and experience across the decades of helping churches in this area, but asking you about the current findings. And so I'll just get right to it, Greg. It's like, what is just like one trend that you might be able to share with us that might feel like it's under the radar, like a quiet disruptor? Like, what should pastors name out loud now rather than later? Do you have anything that you can share with us?
Yeah, I love the word quiet disruptor because this summer I was on a sabbatical. I took a sabbatical, and we got to my wife and my daughter, who's 15. Got to walk part of the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage. And so you can walk from all different places, but we did 165 miles. Some of them are like 500 miles. So we did 165 miles, which is like a lot. It wasn't like something I was doing a lot before that. And so we did 10 to 15 miles a day. And we realized as we were walking, we did a lot of research ahead of time and talked to a lot of people that had done it before, right? Mm-hmm. To try to see what we're going to be into. And one of them, everybody that had walked it before always focused on our feet. And they were like, take care of your feet. And that was, I feel like, a quiet disruptor, because it was one of the things that could literally take you out of the game completely. And we saw it happen time after time, even with young people that showed up kind of ill-prepared a little bit, maybe had, just whatever shoes they had. I saw somebody hiking in Chuck Taylors one day. I'm like, you are just literally going to destroy your feet. And we saw some of those same people down the road with multiple blisters. We even had, that was one of the things we did. We brought a blister pack care kit with us in our backpack so we could, and we never had to use it on ourselves. We actually just got to use it for other people and kind of take care of them. But, you wouldn't see those people for the next four days or so, because like once you get a blister, you're done. You're pretty much done. And it's that tiny little thing that kind of cracks open. So one of the things that we saw on our survey was the gap between trust and transparency in church finances. And our survey showed 90% of churches or pastors believe their congregation trusts their financial leadership, which in and of itself, that's a positive thing. That's really great. And our survey focused actually on church leadership. So it was the leaders that were answering the questions, right? So they saw themselves and their churches as trusting in their financial leadership. But then there's so many other surveys out there that have focused on church attenders and what they believe. And most of those say that there's a distrust in institutions like the church,
Yes.
and that the trust in the church is at an all-time low. So at first, this kind of felt like a contradiction. And anyway, anytime in data there's a contradiction, it's like, ooh, let's dig in there and see what's going on. But I think what our team kind of, as we were looking at it, it felt closer to a paradox, really, that it seems like it contradicts, but later in our survey, it actually showed that some of those same churches that answered, there's a 90% trust, those same churches answered that they aren't regularly showing people where the money goes.
Oh,
So there's
wow.
this lack of transparency piece. And I don't think it was intentional, like they're trying to hide something. It's just that they don't regularly do it. And so if you look at, like, I think the people that are the 90% trust is probably the people that are givers, those that already trust and give. Whereas the people that aren't giving yet, the people that are just coming to your church and are attending, but they haven't yet give, those are the ones that are probably feeling that lack of trust.
Wow, that's such an interesting insight, and I think like when you hear it, it sounds intuitive, but you don't think of that, right? I think that gap that you're talking about is completely something that every leadership team should start to talk about and discuss. What?
Yeah, and it's that lack of transparency is like that little blister. It's that hairline crack it's kind of easy to miss now, but it can really undermine trust over time if not addressed. Because it's better for pastors, like as you said, to call it out and start sharing clear, regular financial updates. So really that nothing starts to erode that trust.
So what about those that are attending but not giving? Like, what's the, off the cuff, what's one suggestion, tactical thing that you think? I mean, it's probably not just let's publish our QuickBooks online for everybody to see and send it to a first-time giver. What is an actual practical, concrete thing that someone can consider?
Yeah, I mean, we say trust is a gateway to generosity. And so without trust, there is no true generosity.
Yeah.
And so I think it's about building that trust. And how do you build that trust? Well, you show them where it goes. And I think I just remember when I was a pastor, like there's so many church people that think that their pastor only works one day a week, right?
Yes.
Like, because that's the only day they see them. And so without a pastor kind of training the church on what they actually do the rest of the time, and being transparent with that, they have this like weird thing where churchgoers are like, yeah, well, he only works on Sunday.
Mm,
I think the same thing happens with money. If we only talk about it once a year, right before Generosity Sunday, or the end of the year giving push, or when we're doing a capital campaign, well, that's self-serving. We're saying, hey, God says you should be generous, and by the way, you can write that generosity
yeah.
check to us, right? That does not build that trust. And so I think the churches that are successful are the churches that use vision, and show the impact. Not just, yes, the church dollars that people give do keep the lights on and pay salaries, but that's not the why. The why is so that they can make a missional impact in their community and change their city for the good. That if
Yes.
their church disappeared, that their city would actually be sad about it, right? And so if they can cast that vision, then people will give. That's why I think the younger givers, it's not like they're not giving. They're giving to organizations that are clear in their
Yes.
giving trends, Compassion and World Vision, these organizations that can tie a dollar to taking care of a kid and feeding them. Like, that's a real connection.
Definitely. And as a certified story brands marketing consultant, I completely see that over and over again, that when we actually bring the clarity to the messaging, that things change for any organization and ministry. Now, your team works with churches of all sizes across the country, right? Like it's small church planters, large multi-sites. Could you share, I guess, what financial pattern from that survey maybe surprised you? Like there's a lot of things in there that are probably normal and is confirming things that you might have guessed. But what financial patterns from the recent survey surprised you the most?
Yeah. As we crunch the numbers, a couple of patterns really did catch me off guard. I mean, first, 75% of churches in the study needed improvement in at least three financial areas.
Oh,
There
okay.
were, I think there were seven total financial areas. And these are areas like accountability and oversight, mission driven financial planning, generosity and donor management. And there was, four or five others. And at least three, 75% of churches needed improvement in at least three. So I expected some challenges, but not really that many at
Mm,
once. Which honestly is why we're in business. It's
yeah.
good for us, right?
Yes.
We did see a stark contrast in bookkeeping approaches. A lot of churches that were struggling were also relying on volunteer bookkeepers, those that maybe don't have the financial expertise or the breadth of expertise of working with multiple churches. They only work with one. And so, they get kind of myopic. Um, and the ones who felt most financially confident were using experienced bookkeepers that were focused on the church, because bookkeeping for the church is actually different. Businesses are worried about profit and loss. I've never once heard a church excited about profit.
Yeah.
um, and so they balance sheets and stuff like that. Pastors just don't get excited about that stuff because they get excited about mission. But business people get real excited about that, and so it matters even the experience level of your bookkeeper.
Oh, that's
um,
interesting.
so we know that having the right financial support mattered. And obviously we believe deeply in that, but seeing the difference, that difference show up and that disparity so clearly in the data was kind of like a wake up call.
So there are tons of churches that use volunteer bookkeepers, right? Someone from the community that might know a little bit of finances. They might not even be an accountant or been in the accounting department of their work, etc. But they just know Excel better than the pastor, right, and things like that.
Yep,
What would you
exactly.
what would you say is like one of the common risks or the blind spots for that type of help? Instead of someone that's professionally trained in the niche of ministries and churches and nonprofits.
Yeah, I mean the blind spots are there. There's there's quite a lot of them. But I will say, like, we don't see any other business that does church finances and helps churches with finances. We don't see them as competition, because our biggest competition is that
Yeah.
volunteers in the church, because it's free. But free isn't always free. So the real costs of it are, one, just really easy. They don't know what they don't know.
Mm.
So if they know, let's say they know a little bit about bookkeeping, but they don't really know gap accounting, right? And so there's a reason why gap got started, is because they wanted to make sure everybody was talking about the same
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
And so they end up adding the numbers right, but no one else could look at it and say, "Oh yeah, this all looks good," right? And so even if you have like a finance team that has some business people on it, they're going to get the reports from an untrained bookkeeper and be like, "What is this?" Right? Like they just don't know, so they can't then say, "Are there holes or not?" So that's one. Another one is, if they ever get upset, they leave your church, right?
That is
So,
true.
and sometimes they want to sadly burn it all down. And this is a real life example, from a church that we worked with. And they had this bookkeeper right before on staff. It wasn't an untrained bookkeeper, they were a larger church. She knew what she was doing. But when she left, she got a bug in her bonnet about something that the church was doing, or thought they were doing wrong, and went straight to like the attorney general of that state. And now the church had an open investigation.
Wow.
They went through years of having to spend money on lawyers and fighting this. They had to do a forensics accountant to come in, only to tell them they were doing nothing wrong. And they spent a ton of money doing that, just because somebody got really upset and decided to try to burn it all down when she was going out the door,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
So that is definitely not free.
I mean, I know from my own personal experience that, unless you're working with a professional who understands the church world specifically, they're just common, even strategic stuff like how do you actually prepare the statements that's board ready for your elders and your board, right? Or
Right.
how do you deal with things like, I don't know, in kind gifts that typically is not done in the business world, or housing
Right.
allowance documentation and things like that, right? There's all these very tactical things that are easy to just say, oh, that's okay, you'll Google it and figure it out, but they are significant in the church world.
Yeah,
That's
it's there's whole companies like ours dedicated just to e-commerce, right?
yeah,
Because an e-commerce business is actually different than a painting
yeah,
business.
yes,
And so same thing with the church.
awesome. Digital giving is another thing, right? But businesses don't have online giving and fundraising, et cetera. And I think
I
that's
bet a lot of businesses would love that.
absolutely right. And so, and digital giving, online giving is represents a majority of the donations. And I think in the report you found that 2/3 of the churches are in that category right now. What would you say is like a mistake that you see churches make when they are adopting new giving tools right now?
Yeah, this is a funny one because actually, when I saw the question, I thought it would come back way higher than two
Yeah.
thirds, right? Like, who are those people that still can find cash? Like, they just took the penny out of
Well, forget about the
circulation.
cash. It's checks. There are people who are
Checks and
mailing in
cash.
checks still.
Right. I haven't wrote a check in years, and hope I never have to. But yeah, it came back about 2/3 of churches now are seeing the majority of giving coming through digital platforms. The great thing about this is those are transparent by nature,
Yeah,
because it's coming in through an app. So already there's eyes on it,
yeah.
whereas cash could be taken by somebody if without the right things in place. Um, but one of the mistakes we often see, and we've seen this over and over again, because a new app comes out that's a giving app,
Yeah.
and a pastor will get all excited about it, and they'll adopt it, and they'll announce it like once or twice from the stage,
Yeah.
and that's it. And then they wonder why people don't start using it, or why people why it's not adopted, and so they end up actually getting less efficient, because I mean, we've worked with churches when they first come in with us, they have like 5 giving platforms. Why?
Wow.
Like, you have 5 different ways that people can give. That sounds all good, except that you have also 5 different companies that
Wow.
you're paying money to, and you don't get any of the volume discounts or anything like that. But you also have to keep track of that, and it's a nightmare on our side, actually. So we encourage you, have one. That's one of the mistakes, is kind of seeing it as the Wild West that it is, and adopting more than one, or not rolling it out in a way that truly trains the church.
And I'm assuming that your team could help a church if they have multiple, giving accounts on different platforms, etc. That you can figure out a migration, basically like a playbook, a way to shepherd them through a process that makes sense to consolidate all those platforms together.
Yes, and even more than that, every one of these giving solutions out there it behooves them to get you on their platform, right? And so they have extensive training
Yeah.
that they will help churches do it the right way, and they have a lot of experience. There, a lot of giving apps, they will even, I mean, there was one that I don't know if they're still doing it, but they used to actually give a guarantee, like, if your giving
Yes.
doesn't go up by switching to our app,
Yeah.
we'll give you money back.
Yeah.
Which that means they are so confident that if you rolled it out the right way, that you will go up.
Yeah.
And so I mean, they will help you. They will walk alongside you and make sure you roll it out right if you're willing to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, it's not always up and to the right? And sometimes your finances are not where you want to be, right? And sometimes they stall. And I think when you're working with a team, you're able to, from the accounting, the bookkeeping, the financial strategic side, you're probably often able to see issues before the pastors do, right? And so, could you share with us, like, what's an early clue that usually tells you that the ministry might be drifting off course?
Yeah, for one, our team sees it first because they see the reports first.
Yeah.
And sometimes the reports that we send out, they're not even looking at. So that's one issue. But also, I think where our team sees numbers and sees story when they see the numbers. And
Yeah.
so that's often why we can spot it first. One of those first red flags that we see is often when cash flows starts to get tight and a church starts to dip into its savings or reserves. One, that's really bad because we found even within the survey that most churches believe that 45 to 90 days of cash reserves is enough. So, to put that in perspective, you're like a month away from shutting down the church if no money's coming in, right? That's not a lot of time. And so when cash flow gets tight and they start dipping into savings, it starts as 1 month and then moves on to multiple months, but they're not recognizing the problem. There's another one that we see often, and that's when expenses just keep rising faster than giving. And this happens especially as a church is growing. A church starts growing fast. Then you got other leaders in the mix. Before it was one leader kind of making sure everything's working. And then now you got multiple leaders in the mix and they're all spending money because they're all on mission too for their departments, right? And before you know it, it can get way out of control. This actually happened when I was a church planner, and it was a couple years in, and it was the worst meeting I ever had to have with our core people. And I had to go to them and just be like, hey guys, we ate through some of our reserves. And if we don't get like $15,000 or so, we're going to have to like start not doing payroll.
Right.
Which is
but the thing is, Greg, sometimes you are spending more, but you are seeing revenue, like your giving is creeping up and up. You're not like seeing a big dip, right? So are you saying that it's not a revenue issue? Like, is there something else? Like, is it something in terms of like how you manage, how you report? Is it a systems issue?
Yes, I definitely think it can be a systems issue. The other part of our survey found that over 40% of churches don't feel well equipped to forecast and budget. So that's a systems issue, right? A budget is a system, which explains why a lot of pastors miss the warning signs. If you don't have these systems in place where when it hits, it like kind of pings you and starts to flash that dashboard warning sign, well, then you can run your car out of oil if you don't have that light that pops up, right? So we try to look at the patterns. If giving is steady but money's still not enough, there's probably more points to a system or management problem internally. It's one that's somebody's not watching the budget closely. I mean, the budget to actual report is one of the reports that is like so important to see where you are in relation to your spending, because you can start a plan, but if you don't see where you are in relation to it every month, if giving takes a hit, but you spend the same amount that you were planning, well, that doesn't work.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been taught early on that the budget versus actual, that report is basically, if you don't have it, you don't look at it, you're basically driving a car without any dashboard. There's no speedometer, there's no fuel gauge. Like you're flying blind, basically.
Yeah, and it's just one of the reports, but it's a great one to find the quick. Because if giving itself is shrinking, then that is where it goes back to. It might be a revenue problem.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, again, I love the fact that you have this intelligence of working with tons of churches, church plants, traditional prevailing church models, your multi-site ministries, right? There's a whole spectrum of ministries and models that you work with. What would you say is one common behavior that you notice that these churches, when they are thriving, they are actually handling complexity pretty well.
Yeah. So I love that you said complexity because the church world, it gets very complex
Yeah.
fast, and if you can't reduce that complexity, you are not going to handle it well.
Yeah.
You gotta actually get more simple as you get more complex, and so uh, one of the things is they don't stick to financial habits, like solid financial habits. Financial habits are kind of like the gym. If you work out once every month, but you work out all day for that month, I mean all day for that the time that you work out, you will not see gains. But if you work out every day for 10 minutes, you will see way more gains because it's actually about the consistency of the habit. It's sticking to that and making it a habit. So they don't assume things will just fall into place even early on. They put clear, the ones that I say handle complexity well are the ones that actually put clear processes in place for budgeting, tracking, accountability, those types of things. Again, the budget thing is so important. And I think when I was a pastor, I didn't really understand that, because but the finance piece of it was just one part of my job, right? And it was the part of my job that was sometimes depressing because you look at the reports and you're like, oh shoot, we don't have enough coming in, or we're spending too much. And so I kind of put it off. I remember it switched for me. I'm married to an accountant, so it was super helpful. And she would help me see it differently. And one of the things she said to me was like, don't think of it as a budget, because when you think of it as a budget, you're thinking a constraint. Because I'm a creative person, I like to see opportunities. I don't like to see constraints. And so I was really looking at the budget as like this, this almost this necessary evil. Like I have to do it, but I don't really like it. And then I started to switch that mentality to seeing it as a tool to make sure that I knew exactly where my dollars were going, and that they were going to the right place, that they were actually going to mission. Because sometimes we'd get to the end and be like, man, we spent a lot of money doing this thing, this great event, right? But it yielded almost no missional movement in our church. I'm not saying the event was negative. It could have had a lot of other things that it maybe did. But if you did an event that then causes you to have to not make payroll, no one would make that decision, right? No one would say, let's do a fall festival and do it really big, and then not be able to pay their pastor at the end of the month. But that is essentially what we do when we don't have a good budget, a good plan.
Oh, that's such a good word. I think that to me is so much intentionality is needed at the leadership level. And pastors often lead well in mission, right? Like they mean well, they have this intent, they've been really thinking about this deeply. But I guess what I see and what you see is that the leaders sometimes hesitate in that financial leadership zone. I would say, so again, I think there's so much incremental gain that you can have if you just have the right posture, right? And so what would be some wisdom you have on what's one shift in that posture that a pastor could have that would actually change their impact the most if they actually address the financial leadership part of their responsibilities well?
Yeah, I actually think the shift is a huge shift in mindset. I'm going to say a hot take. Is that okay? Maybe a hot take here. We teach. It's part of teaching on money. Typically, ends up in the area of tithe, right? And I'm not against teaching on the tithe necessarily, but I actually think teaching on the tithe sometimes comes back to bite us, because we're teaching a principle about something as from a law standpoint, rather than where it is in the freedom standpoint. Generosity should be about freedom. That's why it says that God loves a cheerful giver, right?
Yes.
The givers that the people that really have the spiritual gift of generosity, they are excited to give the amount that they're giving. They don't have any any of those like the sweats or like the feeling of pressure or any of that. So they're not giving out of compulsion. And so that's ultimate freedom, when you can actually give generously because you know that God gave it to you first. I think a lot of churches and pastors and even we come at it from a scarcity mindset. And we come at it from this like because there isn't always enough, and so it ends up leading us down that path. And so if we can make a mindset shift to where we look at money as a gift from God, something that if we steward well, there's more abundance there, that we don't have to be afraid. I think so many pastors teach on the tithe because they're afraid if they don't teach on the tithe, then their people won't give. And I just think that's a sad place. I think we could shift our posture to really seeing our talking about money as shepherding people. The Bible says where your heart is, where your money is, there your heart will be as well. And so if we can shepherd our people and talk about discipleship, talk about money as discipleship, not just once when it's timely for our stewardship campaign, and being more transparent and inviting people. I even, we were playing around with like this concept of donors. We call, that's what we call people who give in the church. And I'm like, when else are you called a donor in your life? It's when they take your liver after you die. Like, I donated my liver, right? And so this even that concept of like, we are managing donors, right, rather than stewarding kingdom investors, that has a different spin. Like, and I'm not saying that's the word maybe we have to use as churches. Thankfully, I don't have to make that decision anymore because I'm no longer a pastor. But like, the word about investment means we're partnered together. We're invested in the same thing. I'm actually thinking, what is that ROI and how can I help it even succeed more, right? Like, that's what investment is. And man, if more of our people thought about that, when I give to the church, I'm investing in a mission that's so much bigger than what I could do by myself. Now we're on to something, not going, hey, you should tithe, give your 10%. Right? Like, don't steal from God. Yes. I mean, I've heard some of these messages before. And again, I don't necessarily think they're completely wrong. Helping people be more consistent with their giving, doing that by percentage basis, all that's going to be good financial wisdom. But if we just go to 10%, I'll kind of close this portion with this, but it's such a great story. I'm part of this thing called Generous Giving, where they celebrate generosity, and it's not necessarily in the church world. It's external in business world. But I was at one time, and the guy next to me actually, he saw this story on screen where somebody donated their whole company. Wow. And so all of the profits basically go towards of just amazing missions around the world. And he got excited about this. So he decided, I'm going to give all of 100% of my business profits away for the next couple of years and just see what happens. In 3 years, he gave $1 million away.
Wow.
I'm going to guess that was way more than a tithe.
That is
so
so
if
inspiring.
We went to that guy, business, kingdom-minded guy in our church, and said, hey, you need to tithe. All of a sudden, we restricted his freedom to give all of the profits. Now, I don't think every businessman is called to give away all their profits, right? God only said to one businessman in the scriptures, Jesus only said to one, give it all away. There was plenty of other businessmen Jesus talked about and talked with, and he never said that same thing. And so it's different hearts, different heart postures need different things. So anyway, small thing, but I think that we get in the wrong mindset about money, that it's this thing that we need to protect so much against because the love of money is the root of evil and all these things, which I think are true. But then we miss the leveraging that money can actually provide.
I love it. Well, Greg, thank you so much for spending some time with us, for the clear, practical wisdom today. I mean, I love how you talk about transparency and budgeting on a mission, shaping generosity around freedom. I think that's so important. And friends, for those of you that have been listening in, you can catch Parable's State of the Church Finances report. We'll put it in the show notes. You can get it at Parable's site. I think you want to be able to share this conversation, whether it be this specific episode or the report, with a pastor or a finance lead that you know that will benefit from it. I think this is an important conversation to steward as we move forward, so that your mission and your ministry can actually flourish. Greg, truly appreciate the time and the heart you have for your churches today. Thank you so much for everything. If this has helped you lead better, I want you to hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and we'll see you here next time. Make sure to stay focused, stay generous, and keep on leading so that every dollar is on mission.